Utah Athletics has set a new precedent in college sports and has changed the college sports landscape for how we know it. So, Otro Capital and Utah Athletics have created an LLC called Utah Brands and Entertainment LLC, which basically operates as an independent offshoot of the athletic department, which is co-owned by the university and Otro Capital. The school will retain the majority ownership of the decision making, which will go through the school president and athletic director. This actually got approved by the NCAA as long as the president and the athletic director maintain majority decision making. But Ultra Capital will be responsible for basically governing the ticket sales, the sponsorships, concessions, and merchandise. Now, the one thing that I do think can get a little blurry and could cause a lot of issues in the future is that basically donors will be able to purchase stakes in Utah brands and entertainment. And between the investments from donors and nine-figure deal between Ultra Capital, you're looking at about $500 million, which is amazing for the university. So the Big 12 did consider doing this as a whole, as a conference, but in that deal, they would have to give up 20% of the conference, and a lot of the schools basically voted against it, which I think is smart because giving away 20% of an entire conference to private equity, it's not that's not what you want to do when you have to govern a whole bunch of entities individually. And the Big Ten also proposed the same thing, but I'd imagine that the bigger schools definitely voted against it. The Ohio States, the Michigans, and now the USCs, the UCLAs, the Oregons. I imagine all those schools don't want to share the same revenue pot as the Marylands, the Indianas, the Northwesterns. So when people read the news that Utah is signing a private equity deal that's north of $500 million, everybody starts to freak out and ask, okay, is this the end of college sports as we know it? And to answer that question, the end of college sports as we know it ended a long time ago. When NIL was first introduced, this was always the path that this could lead down. When you are basically giving money away to athletes with nothing in return, people are going to try to figure out, how do I get this money back? Because these donors and the athletic department, they're giving these NIL deals away to these kids who are only going to be there for a guaranteed season. Some of these kids are signing 2, 3, 4 year deals, and I understand that. But the majority of these $50,000 to $100,000 to $150,000 deals that these kids are signing, it's only lasting for 1 year. And either these kids are leaving or these kids are asking for more money. So these donors who are spending all this money and giving all this money away to see championships, to see their school, their alma mater win, they're not seeing anything back. And especially if they're not winning, then people are just going to take their money and go home. Well, schools are now going to sign these private equity deals so that, one, the school can stop losing money, because we just read a report that Colorado is down $20 million in debt and Ohio State is in a $37 million deficit. And I would agree that Ohio State would probably be in $25 to $30 million in debt as long as they're winning championships. Colorado, on the other end, they're not having that. And so I'd imagine a school like Colorado is probably searching for an avenue to get private equity because, one, they don't have the funds to keep up with these other schools. Two, they're not going to keep raising tuition and raising prices for everything else just for the little and small amount of gains that will help their football team. Talking about Michigan State getting $400 million, talking about Utah now inking a deal for $500 million. These schools are now, one, they're now set for a long time. But two, you have an entire committee who is hired to basically do a facelift of the entire program. Like I said, from the ticket sales, sponsors, concessions, merchandise, all of that will be included and will be a group of people's job to take it from a B- to an A-, and then eventually from an A- to an A+. The problem is that these programs are running off of spending $20 to $30 million per season without winning a title. And I think when people talk about winning is everything, yeah, winning is everything, especially when it comes to private equity, because guess who can take their money and go home if things don't work out? These big companies like Otro Capital. And if they decide in 5 to 7 years that this deal is not worth it with Utah, they'll back out. And then we'll see Utah fall off the face of the earth, because for 3 to 4 to 5 years, you've had a totally separate offshoot entity running your program. And when they decide to pull the plug will get pulled. Now, I was looking through Utah's financials and I came across their expense report for the fiscal year of 2024. And I'm showing you guys at the top because at the very left, you can see football, which had $11 million in ticket sales, compared to basketball, who had $1.8 million in ticket sales. And then you can compare it to all the other sports that are listed on here. And so we go to the next scene, we will see that you can see the number of the operating expense that football had at $52 million, basketball, $10 million. And if you look across the bottom line at the deficits, you will see that the other sports lost Utah over $25 million. Now, the football team profited $26 million, but if you look at all these other sports after basketball, it goes down and down and down and further away from what these schools can manage year to year. So is Utah going to keep losing $10 to $15 million a year on these other sports that aren't generating them any revenue? Or are they going to ink a deal with one of these private equity firms and to make up those losses? And not only to make up those losses, but to improve and keep on improving and retain the talent that it's going to take to keep these programs from going forward. Because I think a lot of people don't really realize is that, yes, it takes money to get these really good athletes and really good kids to these schools, but it takes even more money to retain them. Because when a better school like a USC or UCLA or Oregon sees one of these kids at Utah and is ready to double up what Utah is paying them, yeah, you might say, okay, we're not paying that much money to keep one singular kid, but times that by 3 or 4, and now your team sinks again. So kind of getting back to Utah's inking of this deal, I think what's very interesting as well is that the jobs that this private equity company will now take over as part of running Utah's athletic department. Now, these people aren't on the grounds of Utah per se, they're in New York. So I wonder how that'll be if they put a team out in Utah to kind of see the day-to-day operations. I'd imagine that's what they do if they were smart. But you need people that are on the ground working day-to-day and are trying to elevate these programs, because you might think, oh, Utah, they're big enough, they're in the Big 12, they have the resources that they need. No, clearly they don't, or else they wouldn't go fishing out for $500 million to help out their whole athletic department. So I think you're going to see a lot of programs like a Michigan State who just got $400 million. They're trying to keep up. And this is the only way that schools are going to be able to keep up, by generating as much money as they can while also pooling together money from the outside. Because like I said earlier, you're not going to get a bunch of Ohio States and Colorados that are almost $25 to $30 million in debt year to year. That's going to have to change. And for that to change, private equity needs to get involved, and private equity is probably here to stay. Do I think this ruins college sports? I don't think so, because I think at the rate that what we're going at with NIL, with coaching buyouts, with ticket sales, with everything that formulates into college football, I think you need that big foundation and baseline of money to be able to operate. Because if you go year to year looking to fundraise, wondering where your next big check is going to come from, it could be too late. It could be in the window of getting an important recruit or not, or getting 10 important recruits or not, or seeing 10 important recruits and you're Alabama go to Georgia because you couldn't raise the money to keep those guys. And I think that's what coaches and athletic directors and school presidents are more scared about, is that what do we do to keep these players? How do we keep these players from chasing the money? Because the opportunity to play football and go to the NFL and get a great education is all right here. You're going to continue to see universities and even conferences sell out, as people would like to say, and take on these private equity firms that are run by these people who went to these schools, who want to put their name in sports because sports is the best business going in America, and put their name on something that gets nationally recognized to fuel their own personal brand or individual ego. So I'm not sitting here saying that private equity is bad for the sport. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing for the sport. I'm saying that this is what needed to happen to keep funding college football as we know it now in the 2020s.